This is what he quoted, right?
Yep. 1 Timothy 2:5.
Now, the way Archive told me he formulated the argument was, a mediator is distinct between the parties that he mediates for. Is that what he said?
He says.
Okay. You know why this is really baffling? Because there are sophisticated forms of the argument. There are anti-Trinitarians who know how to make this argument powerful. He's not one of them, because notice the argument is a mediator is distinct from the parties he mediates for. Well, if he's consistent, since Jesus mediates for humans, that means Jesus can't be a man.
Sam, that's literally what I thought when he brought up this argument. With the way that he brought this argument up, that's literally what I thought. Yeah. I'm like, okay, if he's saying that this excludes him from being God, then this also excludes him from being man then. So what is he?
Precisely.
Oh, man.
So his formulation, because remember, he's hearing arguments and he's parroting them, but he doesn't know how to articulate them. So the argument goes like this. There is one God, one mediator between God and men, the man Christ Jesus. So a mediator is distinct from the parties that he mediates for. So Jesus as a mediator can't be God if he mediates for God. But by the same token, he can't be human if he mediates for humans. Obviously, that's nonsense because Paul just told us he is a man.
Exactly.
So what Paul is saying is that Jesus is not the one God in this sense. Here, the one God is the Father.
Exactly.
So Jesus is not the Father, and he's not the humans that he mediates for. But the question is, even though he's not those human beings that he mediates for, but he's still one with them in nature because he's a man, he's human like they are. Do we find evidence from Paul that though Jesus is distinguished from the one God here, who's the Father, still Jesus is one with the Father in essence, so that he can be God in essence and human in essence, but not identical to the one God, the Father, just like he's not identical to the humans that he mediates for? Yes, because if you don't stop there and read Paul in context, you'll see what Paul teaches. In point of fact, not only in 1 Timothy 2:5, read verse 6, the next verse, and show you how this assumes the deity of Christ. It assumes that Jesus is God. If you read verse 6.
Yeah, so verse 6 says, who gave himself as a ransom for all, which is the testimony given at the proper time.
So Jesus offered his soul, his human life, as a ransom for all, so that now everyone has the chance and opportunity to turn to God and be reconciled.
Yeah.
That statement in itself assumes the deity of Christ. What do I mean? He's just affirmed he's a man, he's human. We all agree. But in saying that Jesus offered his life, his human soul, to make atonement for all, he can only be God because of what Jesus said. Now, unless Don believes Paul contradicts Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which he doesn't, he assumes that all these books are inspired and consistent. Go to Matthew 19, 25 to 26. Now, if you want to go to Mark, because some believe it's the earlier version, then you can go to Mark 10, 26 to 27 and see how that statement in verse 6 assumes that Jesus must be God as well as man. So you can either go Matthew 19, 25, 26 or Mark 10, 26, 27. It's the parallel.
I got it. So Mark 10, and they were exceedingly astonished and said to him, then who can be saved? Jesus looked at them and said, with man it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God.
Now, I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm not as intelligent as Protestant believer, though I'm better looking. If salvation is a work that's impossible for humans to accomplish, see what they're asking? Who can be saved? With man, it's impossible. It is humanly impossible, right? For any human to save himself, let alone someone else, right? That's what Jesus said, right?
Yep.
How can Jesus, the human, do what is humanly impossible?
Exactly.
Because he saves multitudes of human lives.
That's excellent, Sam.
You get the point?
Yep.
Either Paul contradicts Jesus, or Jesus is man, but he's more than man. He must be God. I got to put down the air conditioner. I'm freezing.
No,
because Jesus just said, salvation is a work impossible for any man to accomplish. Only God can do it. But Jesus did what is impossible. He saves countless of humans, something he said only God can do. Now, how's he going to reconcile that?
You guys get the point?
You can break it down if you want.
Only God can do, only God is able to save. And according to the same passage that says that the man Jesus Christ is the one who mediates between man and God, Jesus is the one who gives his soul, his life as a ransom to save all people who come to believe. That's something only God can do according to the apostles.
Yeah, right there.
According
According to the
what
Lord himself. So it's ironic that the very verse that he quoted in context shows that Jesus must be God in the flesh, the God-man, because as man, he mediates for men before God, but because he's God, he can then save them by his sacrificial death.
that's
It's
right.
ironic. Just read verse 6 and read